And what is up, friends, neighbors, baby mamas, babies? Welcome. It's Thursday. It's 4 o'clock. Canna-Talk ND with Wilson. Every stinking Thursday I get in here. Except for next Thursday, I'll be in Pigeon Forge. Me and my girlfriend Dolly are going to hang out. She requested me personally to go, so, I got to do it. And I'm just kidding. But anyway, we're going to talk about cannabis, the benefits of cannabis legalization, and general druggy news in general. We got more coke stories in the news. No mistreatment of animals, thankfully. We've got people railing in Minnesota about how we just didn't know what we were doing, legalizing cannabis. We didn't know what we were doing. So we'll talk a little bit about that, 420. It's a beautiful day here. KRFF 95.9, RadioFreeFargo.org, streaming everywhere on the blue and green marble you hail from. We can get into your ear hole. And I'd love to get into your ear hole, And every DJ on the best radio station in the world, as far as I'm concerned, would love to get into your ear hole as well. So check out other stuff. Before me, Country with Trav in the mornings. You got automation, AI, Fred spelled with a P, spinning the jizzams. And I just realized that was a horrible phonetic sounding slang I just did. Lord forgive me. I believe God created cannabis for us to use as we see fit, and I show him props every Sunday, Antioch Church. 10 a.m., we do a recovery class. If you've knocked a monkey off your back and you can still feel him pulling on your pant leg, or if that full-grown monkey is still just riding up on you, it's kind of like your addiction tramp stamp. If you got an addiction tramp stamp monkey, come on through. We know what we can do. We know what can help. And then 11 a.m. worship. I'm on stick duty. It's been kind of a tumultuous week. Next week, I'll be on vacation, like I said, with my parents, so that's going to be cool. And they need some time to unwind. My dad lost his mom last Friday, so the funeral's tomorrow. So I turned into like a shuttle and a hotel all of a sudden, because Fargo seems to be where you got to fly into if you got to get out to Lakes Country. I mean, it's cool, but having ADD and just pulling the rug underneath me is crazy. So I'm trying to keep everything straight. I've got to remember my suits to go because I'm not flying with them. It's nuts. But anyway, Sunday, 11 a.m., just one service. This show is brought to you by Black Cottage Alchemy. Black Cottage Alchemy on Facebook. Black Cottage Alchemy, 1,600 megs of CBD, swirling around in a big tub of goodness. Comfrey, colloidal silver. Not to be confused with coitus, because I think that's two different silvers. And, don't quote me. But thank you, Black Cottage Alchemy, for sponsoring this show. I also want to make an appeal to y'all. You're listening to Radio Free Fargo, like I said, 95.9 community radio. You a business owner, you a manager, you a nonprofit organization considering advertising? Why not learn what underwriting is on a nonprofit community radio station instead? To learn more about what underwriting is, please contact us at our website, www.radiofreefargo.org, or at our profile on Facebook. Why not let listeners know that you support the community by supporting a community radio station like a 95.9? And it keeps stuff like me talking about cannabis. I mean, I don't know where else you can find this kind of voice, this kind of tasty sounding voice, might I add, coming through the airwaves, making change, taking names. That's what I'm doing. We open a big fat bag of cannabis news at 420. I've been dealing with a lot of anxiety, and I almost thought, nah, I ain't even going to do this stupid show today. But I'm an idiot, and I'm not a quitter, so here we are. Let's give all of us a hand for being alive. But anyway, it's good to be here. Next Thursday, I fly out Tuesday afternoon to Nashville, then I fly up into the Blue Ridge Mountains, which, again, I'm looking forward for a little vacay, and then I'll be back Saturday night. Which is crazy because that's how cheap it is to fly straight to Nashville. I mean, it was under $100 round trip. But anyway, I digress. And what am I even talking about, huh? War. What is it good for? I got some music. So why don't we do that? And then we'll talk about stuff after that. This is Devin Allman, Donovan Frankenreiter, who I thought was the hurdy-gurdy man, Donovan. But I'm just an idiot. This is just a skateboarder. 95.9. And there you have it. Calling all you writers, Devin Allman, Donovan Frankenreiter, which, like I said, here on KRWF 95.9, RadioFreeFargo.org. We're streaming everywhere on the blue and green marble you hail from. We can get into your ear hole. Canna-Talk ND with Wilson. I'm Wilson. We're going to open a big fat bag of cannabis news at 4:20. Stick around for that. So, yeah, I thought Donovan come with the hurdy-gurdy man singing songs of love. I thought it was this guy, but this guy looks like he's only like 30-something. And I thought for sure hurdy-gurdy man was old. So I look it up, and apparently there is just a one-word Donovan, because that's how cool he is. And then the other Donovan has a last name attached to it and was found by Jack Johnson and is not the hurdy-gurdy guy. So I don't know if you were confused about that, but I was, and so you're welcome if I can clear that up for you. There's two Donovans. One looks like an old wizard lady, and the other one is a skateboarder who is a skateboarder. So let's talk a little something here before we get to it. You know what I'm saying? So there's something in South Dakota going on. Two things. We'll talk about more of this other thing at 4:20. But last week I talked about how the medical cards are double what the state government thought. So because they don't know anything, and a lot of times they like to think they do, and then they always got to come up with reasons for it, and it's never positive. So now they're analyzing that it's probably a negative thing. There's so many people that wants medical cannabis. That just don't make any sense to me, bruh. Because I'm looking at it as like there's probably so many more people that could benefit, but for the costs, and they certainly don't make it easy for you to have a medical card. And a lot of people, they start talking about taxes. It's just easier to get it somewhere else, so you start overtaxing everything. But then, as we all talk about at 4:20, they found 10 different pesticides rampant in a lot of illicit black market cannabis. And again, I mean, mold can easily get into your plants. I remember as a kid, man, that telltale mold smell from that Mexican brick weed. We still smoked it. And by the grace of God, I'm still alive today. Now, I do have a third foot growing out, like right above my left cheek, but it just helps with stability, so I'm not complaining too much. But I think it probably was that mold in that paint can pot from 1992. Shout out Gwen Stefani. I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't need to, right? I'm just happy to be alive. I'm glad I'm here. And I'm also going to be glad when it's done. Kind of sweating in my forehead. I don't know why. Cannabis moment. South Dakota Attorney General. So this isn't that story, but there's two South Dakota stories today. I do want to say Stinky Arts Music Mart is right after me, and then like a mixtape, and then maybe something else. I should really have it wrote down so I can inform the listeners. That's you, buddy. But the evening gets wrapped up with Artemis Shrine. Man, I don't know whoever named that, but buddy, I sure am happy you did, and I'm so glad I get to say it every Thursday. Artemis Shrine. Okay, well, now let's talk about this. And then we'll play some tunes, and that'll be 4:20. South Dakota Attorney General releases final summary for 2024 cannabis legalization ballot initiative. So the state government's been fighting stinking cannabis legalization tooth and nail. They analyzed the single subject rule. They did everything they could to thwart it, and they did thwart it. So now, lo and behold, the legislative body, the Attorney General, he decides they'll come up with one. But you're never good, right? They're always slanted for them and not, always for thee and not we. But anyway, advocates weigh litigation over unfair language. South Dakota's Attorney General has approved the final summary language. Advocates are taking issues with key parts of the description and are now considering bringing the matter to court. And why wouldn't advocates take issues with key parts? The legislative body loved taking issue with key parts, that really had no kind of real foundation. So they don't like that the word sell is omitted. It still says that adults 21 and older could distribute cannabis, despite the fact that the measure was intentionally drafted to exclude commercial sales in order to avoid a constitutional challenge. Schweck pointed out that the AG added the word recreational to the title, which he said was biased and unfair. And of course, they said marijuana instead of cannabis, which makes me hate them already. But it's time for a little tune, and I dusted off an old classic for you guys. This is Crash Test Dummies doing Jackson Brown's Cocaine. You're welcome. 95.9 FM. Thank you. Now you've been too great. Too good. Thank you. Cocaine. Crash Test Dummies. That's from their live album, 2018 on KRFF 95.9 Radio. freefargo.org. Programming on 95.9 FM Radio Free Fargo, KRFF-LP. Has been underwritten by Drummer's Journey. Drummer's Journey offers percussion instruments, hardware, electronics, accessories, and more. They have full service for drummers, including repair, custom building, and lessons. Drummer's Journey is located at Highway 10 East Small and Moorhead, Minnesota. Their hours are Monday through Thursday, 11 to 7, Fridays and Saturdays, 11 to 5, Sundays, noon to 5. For more info, check drummersjourney.com. They have a profile on Facebook. Canna-Talk ND with Wilson opens a big fat bag of cannabis news right now. So, what I want you to do, if you got a medical card, roll your chair to the freezer. Get some ice, stick it in a cylinder. Gurgle, gurgle.
Hey, it's Phil from Canna-Heads. Like this episode? Hit that like button. And if you enjoy the show, hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on cannabis news, local and national. Listen live on 95.9 in the Fargo, North Dakota region from 4 to 5 p.m. on Thursday. For our non-Fargo region friends, you can listen on your favorite podcast platform. Just search Canna-Talk ND with Wilson. Now enjoy the show.
All right. Hello, everybody. How are we doing? Everybody good? Good. So, it's time to open a big fat bag of cannabis news. I'm going to do that right now. And again, I wanted to remind everybody that I will be in the Blue Ridge Mountains next Thursday, and I should figure out how to upload a stinking show, but, it is what it is. So, what are we going to talk about? I know. So, let's wrap this South Dakota thing up. So, he goes, judicial or legislative clarification of this measure may be necessary. Lastly, the final explanation concludes with a line that Schweck describes as the biggest problem. It might seem benign, but the implication that there's legal uncertainty. Oh, here's the problem. Well, problem says is the last line of the measure says clarification of this measure may be necessary. What? So after voters approved adult use legalization in 2020, the state Supreme Court invalidated the measure over a single subject concern. So voters might be less inclined to support the reform again if they think history will repeat itself. And there's no sales at this initiative. So that's kind of weird. The concerns are nuanced but important, the campaign says. Voters rejected legalization at the ballot last year, so passage is far from guaranteed. And he goes in an era when the cannabis reform movement is very underfunded. Every little thing matters. He thinks most people doesn't realize that there's virtually no philanthropic dollars going to cannabis anymore. There used to be. It doesn't exist anymore. So, in a letter to the Attorney General that Schweck sent, the campaign also requested that the final text replace the word marijuana with cannabis, but the office declined to adopt any of the recommended changes. Schweck says, I'm not surprised they ignored my comments because the process is really tilted in the favor of government agencies. In the end, one of the most pressing challenges for activists is raising enough funding to make another full-out campaign. He says, without additional funding required to run a statewide campaign, they may ultimately decline to comment to the measure. Now, I don't know if you guys have heard this. And I've talked to you about it, right? About the scheduling. And the DEA and the FDA and the BAA and the ZD-Boo, I don't know, right? They have come up with a recommendation. So if you're not tapped into any of these news stories, you're going to be interested in this. Because I'm not sure what I'm even going to tell you, really, in regards to historic recommendation. Now, for me, historic would be to remove it from the schedule or to put it at the lowest one. However, I think they should just remove it from the schedule. Booze ain't on the schedule. And just look at the stats, So, top federal health agency says cannabis should be moved to schedule. Are you ready for it? Drum roll, please. Schedule 3. Okay? So, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services is officially recommending that cannabis be moved from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 under federal law. It's a historic development. That means the top health agency no longer considers cannabis to be a drug with high abuse potential and no medical value. I guess that is a win. I guess. Okay? But here's the thing. As a Schedule 3 drug, cannabis would still remain federally prohibited. However, the rescheduling would have major implications for researchers who have long criticized the Schedule 1 classification. So yeah, let's bring on the researchers. But what's that do for me, though? And you? Okay, so moving cannabis Schedule 3 would also unlock cannabis industry tax opportunities. DEA spokesperson can confirm they received a letter from DOHHS providing its findings pursuant to President Biden's request for a review. Okay, DEA has the final authority to schedule or reschedule. DEA will now initiate its review. So, we'll see. A White House spokesperson told Cannabis Moment on Wednesday that the administrative process is an independent process and guided by the evidence, so President's team will not be commenting on the agency's recommendation at this time. I mean, not commenting on this at this time is what they love to say. That's just an avoidant thing, They're certainly going to use the evidence. It's going to be guided by evidence, and so I'm going to leave it to HHS and DOJ. Well, I guess I would prefer that they did it over Jean Corinne anyway, I think. Not so sure she should be in charge of scheduling. Now, this is Cannabis Moment for you Kratom heads. And I personally overdid Kratom. I'm an addict. I guess not anymore by the grace of God. I celebrated my 2 years sober last Sunday. Well, Monday was the first day that Kratom certainly wasn't in my life. And I know people that certainly enjoy Kratom and can utilize Kratom as a tool. But I can only eat a whole bag of M&Ms. I can never eat the serving size. I never limit myself to 1/2 of a candy bar. I eat 16. I don't know how to just cycle Kratom. They say you're supposed to do it like one every other day, or skip a few days, or, take just a couple tablespoons. Well, what's a couple tablespoons when you can take a pint, right? When you can mix it into a gallon jug and take a kilo at once to the dome. So for me, if you were to ask me, should Kratom be legal or illegal, I think about how hard it was for me to kick it. But again, I was getting kilos, bags of it, mailed to me, and I got lost in the sauce because, if you got a small bag, when it runs out and you can kind of modulate your usage. But when the sky's the limit, I wasn't trusted around it. And so it was a problem for me. But in the beginning, and the substance itself really helped me. It just helped so much that why do a little when you can do it all, my friend? That's not a great philosophy to run your life, especially when it's narcotics and such. But that's who I be, bruh. So anyway, members of the American Kratom Association said during a webinar that they expect federal legislation to regulate the drug. Apparently, if they can get the FDA to regulate it, they won't make it legal or illegal. So just stay posted on that. And let's see. Well, anyway, like I said, let's talk a little bit more if I have a story about it. But anyway, so Schedule 3. I What do you think of that? I mean that's progress, but what does it even mean, really? So anyway, it looks like that's where we're heading with cannabis scheduling. This is from Cannabis Moment as well. 9 in 10 illicit cannabis samples contain pesticides, in striking contrast to regulated products. And that in itself seems to be like, because wait till I start pronouncing these flippin' names. So a new study reveals a striking contrast. 92% of unregulated cannabis tested positive for pesticides. All right. The analysis allowed researchers to see if the products were grown with or contaminated by any of the 320 different pesticides. For the legal cannabis, the contamination rate was just about 6%, with trace amounts of only 2 pesticides detected, which was myclobutanil and diclofenac. The latter pesticide is not among the 96 that are subject to mandatory testing. Pesticides in the illicit market, however, were ubiquitous. 92% of the samples contain potentially dangerous chemicals. 23 unique pesticide active ingredients per sample. Now, check out these ingredients. You ready? Chlorpyrifos, imidacloprid, and myclobutanil were measured in illicit samples. One illicit sample alone contained 9 different pesticide active ingredients. So, that doesn't sound great. So, unified regulatory approach, it is good just for that, Because again, like I said back in the day, who doesn't know somebody that got stuck with a moldy sack? And usually it was pressed. It was the 90s. We were listening to No Doubt, probably. No Doubt. We were listening to No Doubt. Peeling the layers of that funky grass apart as seeds were bouncing off my face and chest and arms. And you got a whiff. And it was like, what are you going to do? We smoked it anyway. But we also drank out of the garden hose, and we rode our bikes without knee pads. So, there you go. So, whatever I was talking about is what I was talking about. Employers, this is from Cannabis Now. Employers drop screenings for cannabis as legalization spreads. The increasing legality of cannabis is causing some employers to end drug screenings for cannabis. While measures continue to take hold in that direction, either medicinally or recreationally, the trend is causing a shift in employee hiring and retention standards. Which, they were the only idiots that knew they were hurting themselves by not letting people who use cannabis, usually for medical purposes, and it helped them. It helped them be better employees. So some are ending drug testing completely. Some are opting to end screenings for THC. Russo said he see the trend last year and it's just increasing this year. Brenda Boosie, human resource manager from Kalamazoo, said the drug testing for cannabis led the company to eliminate many good candidates, particularly among young people. And they said testing for a legalized substance is not in our best interest. It's legal, she said. They can do it on their own time, but it stays in their system and pegs them as a drug user. Tight labor market spurs changes in cannabis testing. Most people are using cannabis because it comes in so many forms, and you could miss the opportunity to get good employees. And if they're not using it on the job, why do you care? Why do you care? Why does people care? I feel like Jerry Seinfeld. Why do you care? I don't get it. What's the deal with drug testing? I don't get it. Am I right? All right, what's going on? I've officially fell into the goofy pool, y'all. Positivity rates are rising too. So, get your act together. All right, St. Paul considers restrictions on cannabis use. Smoking at city-controlled public places in St. P would be banned if a new ordinance passes. Which, before we get into it, I was going to say, cops have argued for this blanket ordinance. Like, they don't think that it should be the case. And we'll talk about it as we get there. So, City Council President Amy said, I think many of us welcome the change in the decrim. But one of our main roles on City Council is balancing people's personal liberties and then the fairness to the broader community. The ordinance would restrict smoking and vaping, but not use of other cannabis products. It's reduced exposure to secondhand smoke. And then it starts getting into, like Like ignorance. Like what we know is cannabis smoke contains the same toxic chemicals tobacco smoke does. There are studies. I talked about it last week. That's not the case. And in fact, they found that it might actually make your lungs stronger. That was a study done. These guys are just spouting junk. They say cannabis smoke has been shown to cause lung cancer. Prove it. Prove it. Where? Where's the stats of that? It's all been shown to cause heart disease and damage to blood vessels. And then there's short-term things. So asthma attacks for children. See, they spin this stuff, but I don't know. I mean, she also explained people who breathe in secondhand cannabis smoke can have detectable levels of THC in their blood. I don't know. The language in particular is city-controlled public places. It could extend to public right-of-ways, sidewalks. And so the problem is the cops have is a violation of the proposed law would be a petty misdemeanor. All right. And so here's what St. Paul Police Department said, and I'm kind of with it. We welcome an opportunity to work with City Council to develop an ordinance that meets our needs, city's needs. We believe that we can all agree that there are public places where smoking or the exposure to smoke should be limited or prohibited. The proposed ordinance language shared with SPPD extended these prohibited areas to almost all public places, including streets and sidewalks. It also failed to recognize that if this language is written, became an ordinance, there would be an expectation of enforcement, which we don't believe our community would want our officers doing. Touche and a good day. All right, well, let's keep talking about Minnesota, should we? This is Minnesota Senate Republican Caucus. You're listening to Canna-Talk ND with Wilson. I'm Wilson, unfortunately. Just kidding. I'm proud to be Wilson. What? And we're opening a big fat bag of cannabis news. That's what's happening as we speak. I've got about 10 minutes or so of blathering about the cannabis. And now here's a fun letter. And again, this embodies like know-it-all, ignorant, like know-it-allness. Like this is like ignorant. This is like an ignorant know-it-all. You know, who's trumpeting this, like, listen to me, because I know what I'm talking about. Friends and neighbors, throughout this session, the Democrat majority bulldozed a wide range of controversial bills into law with their narrow trifecta majority. Which, I mean, every party, like, they do that too. They do that too, you Republicans. One of the policies, they're no different. I mean, both parties are dirty pool. You know? And what's good for the goose is not good for the gander when it comes to this stupid crap. So, one of the problems he had, his major concern, was the legalization of rec cannabis. With critical safety issues and numerous health and social problems, we made it clear this legislation was not ready to become law. Well, yeah, they sure did. They sure had. They didn't make it clear. How clear could you have made it if it still became law, bruh? You weren't clear at all. We were clear. Yet Democrats chose to ignore the warning signs. See, it's all gloom and doom. So here we go. And only a month into legal rec cannabis use, there are all kinds of problems popping up as we speak. Okay, well, let's talk about them. First, this legislation is written in a way that allows for cannabis use almost anywhere, including by our schools. Oh, no. Our churches and libraries. Can you imagine smoking by a library? And like I said, though, there is something to the smell. And when I was in Illinois, Missouri, last month? A couple months ago, it was ripe for smelling. It was. But again, there's so many tests that proves that there's, it's not as harmful as you think. So, Lindsay shares that cities can put ordinances in for outdoors as they do with cigarette smoking. But assuming that the city doesn't have an ordinance against it, you could smoke outside in parks if you're a certain distance from children's play areas. Okay, so now check out his rebuttal. As noted by the bill author, it's true, municipalities can enact ordinance to regulate. However, there was a very short time between municipalities understanding they needed to enact ordinances and the legalization of cannabis on August 1st. Seems to me like you weren't paying attention. You were sleeping. And so now that's an argument? You were sleeping on this. You didn't have a short time. You knew it was coming. You probably maybe believed that it wasn't going to pass, but you knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. If I was a municipality, I would have known that I probably would have had to enact an ordinance about public places. So he goes, so this means cities and counties are now scrambling. Well, whose fault is that? I mean, how can you blame that on cannabis being legal? How can you? And the law. How can you blame that on? Because you were sleeping and now you're scrambling and I'm supposed to feel sorry for you? Wake up. You know, I'm awake. You get awake, bruh. Are now scrambling to pass local laws governing the public use. Okay. So scramble. What's the problem? I applaud the local governments trying to implement common sense restrictions. At least 10 cities have temporarily banned cannabis sales. Now, I just want you guys to understand that they can't force that forever. It's temporary. You know, so if you're living in Fergus, I guarantee you that's probably one of the 10 cities. You know, I wouldn't be surprised one bit if Breckenridge was a part of this crap cities. All right. And he strongly urges more local government leaders to take the time and consider what's best for raising young people in your community. See, it's all one big spin. They love talking about detriments to the kids. Meanwhile, if we were to analyze kids' safety, we could find some things happening in our world today that is kind of affecting children. Some people would argue keeping them out of public school that 2 years was detrimental. So what are we talking about? So additionally, Minnesota's in a period, which is really awesome, this statement. Minnesota's in a period where it is legal to possess and consume, but is illegal to buy or sell, except on tribal land. So proponents of legal cannabis maintain decrim reduces crime by deterring it and sale from underground markets. However, the illicit market is an even greater problem because cannabis possession is no longer a crime. So what? And this is exactly what California experienced after legalizing cannabis. So basically, between the lines is we aren't making as much money as we wanted to off the backs of overtaxed cannabis that isn't really that great anyway. So the Guardian notes that the cannabis market continues illegal to thrive in California and is far from the law-abiding successful sector that is anticipated. So what's crazy is he says with state licensed dispensaries not expected to open until 2025, there are a few options legally. He says we've already seen cases of illegal cannabis sales due to confusion. Well, that has nothing to do with the bill, right? Confusion is your own issues. That's got nothing to do with cannabis being legal in Minnesota, right? And now you're scrambling because you were sleeping and you decided not to come up with a public usage plan? Get out of here. Besides the strong confusion, I would like to emphasize the troubling health and social problems. Okay? But then, sure, there are some positives. He said, which is true, there's a lot of powerful drugs used for legitimate. However, the harmful side effects of cannabis use must not be ignored. Now, I know somebody. I know all kinds of people. And that's kind of what supported my kind of, because I knew cannabis helped me, even as a as a kid. And I would see older people that would say, like, I've been using, cannabis for 30 some years. And some of these cats were the smartest people I ever met. Well adjusted. And I'm like, well, how, and I know there's, a minority to every rule. And then, of course, he wraps it up with impaired driving as a central concern. And that's the thing. It isn't. It would have been. It would be. Just imagine this. Okay, so alcohol is legal, but it's illegal for people under 21. How come we haven't just made it illegal, made it harder to get booze? Because impaired driving's insane. It should be a central concern. People under 21 driving drunk. Okay? There's just as many people driving with cannabis on them, utilizing cannabis. Like I said, people with ADD, it helps them focus on the road. I'm a safer driver. I always have been. Because it allows me to hyper-focus on the fact that I'm barreling down the road in a thing that could kill myself and whoever's in the vehicle with me and whoever I hit. Now, I can tell myself that, but with ADD, I'm like, there's the squirrel. Oh, I got to get this Snicker bar from the bottom of the seat. Wham! right? Those are all things that can happen if you're easily distracted. And I didn't make myself. God made me, and I am easily distracted without something to keep me focused. And those particular instances, I'm uber safe. Well, anyway, I got a little carried away with all that. So let me just wrap up some stuff. Mexican Navy, this is from High Times. Mexican Navy seizes more than 4 tons of cocaine after high-speed chase at sea. They found more than 9,700 pounds of coke in the Pacific Ocean. A dramatic new footage released by Mexican Navy shows officers carrying out a major drug bust after a high-speed chase at sea. Mexican authorities said they have seized 9,700 pounds. Both operations resulted in high-speed boat chases. 11 people were detained. Cocaine trafficking has exploded in recent years, as I've covered. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, released earlier this year, indicated that production of cocaine had skyrocketed to record levels after lagging for a stretch during the pandemic. Nightclubs and bars were shut as officials ramped up their attempts to control the virus, causing demand to slump for drugs like the cocaine that are often associated with those settings. However, the most recent data suggests this slump had little impact on longer-term trends. So check it. Almost 2,000 tons were produced in 2020. In 2014, that was less than half of today's levels. Well, it's partly because of the expansion in coca bush cultivation, which doubled, hit a peak in 2018, and rose sharply again in 2021. It's also due to improvements in the process of conversion from coca bush to cocaine hydrochloride. Interceptions by law enforcement have also been on the rise at a higher speed, meaning that the interdiction has contained the growth of global amount of cocaine available for consumption. Given all that, perhaps it is a coincidence that the news of major cocaine busts seem to surface regularly these days. Well, like I can tell you, Uruguay broke up an international drug ring after they found 110 pounds. In May, police in Hong Kong seized 82.9 million worth of coke. 3.2 tons in New Zealand. The report from the United Nations explained the consolidation has upended the cocaine trade and one of the drug's long-standing hubs in Colombia. Cocaine trade was once controlled by just a few major players. It now involves criminal groups of all sizes. These developments have led to an increasing presence of foreign actors in Colombia, and it's bled into Ecuador. I mean, my parents live in Ecuador. They're up in the mountains, so they're not as affected. But we're talking, it's crazy. It's crazy. And it's everywhere. You know? You probably can find it downtown tonight if you need. Which you should never need, because crack is whack, bruh. So, let me read this one, and then I'm going to get out of here. Cannabis moment. Delaware's beach towns, known for boozy parties, are banning cannabis businesses. Just let that sink in a little bit. Okay, it's hypocritical that a town that has the well-earned reputation of being a party town is first to jump on the old debunked reefer madness attitude that is somehow perfectly acceptable to get sloshed drunk, but it's not acceptable to get a little stoned. 3 of Delaware's 6 most prominent beach towns have voted to ban dispensaries. 3 more is going to do it too. And it's almost laughable. I mean, Dewey Beach, this guy says, encourages excessive drinking. Clubs are fined yearly for violating the state's alcohol laws. They want all of it banned. No manufacturing facilities or nothing. Rehoboth Beach, for example, has already voted to ban cannabis in public, even though the function of such a ban is not entirely clear. As in the rest of the U.S., cannabis prohibition in Delaware targeted black residents, of course. Unauthorized cannabis sale remains a felony, and even the lowest tier of penalties is punishable by up to 8 years in prison. Man, so isn't that crazy? And so here's the thing. You think, okay, there must be some real reasons that must trump cannabis over booze. No, if you have cannabis, less people are going to drink. All right? In Colorado, I don't have the stats here, but Google it. Colorado has officially sold more cannabis than booze and tobacco combined. Again, and it's not the only state. There's another state that does it too. Isn't that crazy? It's crazy. Well, you've caught me giving you another rabble-rousing edition of Canna-Talk ND with Wilson. Programming on KRFF 95.9 is being underwritten by Flatland Guitar and Lutherie. Flatland Guitar is your full-service guitar shop and your exclusive dealer for Yamaha, Taylor, Paul Reed Smith guitars, and other brands. They sell guitars on consignment, they take trade-ins, and have a full-service on-site repair center. Check out Flatland Guitar and Lutherie on Facebook or visit them in person at 1450 25th Street South in Fargo. Their hours are Monday through Friday, 10 to 6, Saturdays 10 to 5, closed Sundays. Let me get you into some music, and then I'll tuck you in, and then I'm out of here. This is brand new ALO, and this title alone makes this worthy of listening to. I don't know what just happened here, but here's Growing Your Hands Back, ALO. Growing Your Hands Back. Wow, that song was cool. ALO, brand new, off their silver Saturdays. You're listening to KRFF 95.9, RadioFreeFargo.org. Thank you for joining me. Canna-Talk ND with Wilson. I will not be in next Thursday. I'll be with my friend Dolly Parton in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Part of that statement isn't true, but I will be there with my folks. We'll get some, some R&R after this loss in the family. So wish me the best. Pray for me. Because, man, I don't like all this change and upsetness to my routine. Because my routine is pretty linear. Linear? Doesn't matter. But stay tuned for other programming. Again, the night wraps up with Artemis Shrine. This show is brought to you by Black Cottage Alchemy. Black Cottage Alchemy on Facebook. 1,600 mgs of CBD, locally grown, floating around in a bunch of good gooey ooey stuff for any external body issues. Thank you, Black Cottage Alchemy, for sponsoring this show. I believe God created cannabis for us to use as we see fit. I show him props every Sunday at Antioch Church, and I shouldn't be alone. So if you feel like doing it too, come on through. If you got dependency issues, we do a recovery class at 10 a.m. However, it's just one service tomorrow. I'm on stick duty. Again, Canna-Talk ND with Wilson every Thursday. Educate yourselves on the benefits of cannabis so you can educate others on said benefits. I'm out the door. I'll see you in 2 weeks. I got a date with Dolly Parton, and so I can't let her down. And again, part of that statement isn't true. But this is David Allen, Judgment Day. Peace.